Alrighty, well, good morning and hello everyone. I am Christina from Carnegie Science Center's Demonstration Theaters Department, and I would like to welcome everyone to a new installment of our Let Us Grow Together program, Get to Know a Gardener. With this program, we've teamed up with Growing Great and Del Monte Foods in their National STEM Education Initiative, which is to educate students and families on the science of planting, growing, and eating healthy foods. Today, we are fortunate enough to be joined by our friends at the North Hills Community Outreach. Located in northern Allegheny County, North Hills Community Outreach is an organization dedicated to being people helping people. And so we're going to learn a little bit more about this organization with Tom. Tom, take it away.
Thanks, Christina. My name is Tom Baker. I'm the Executive Director of North Hills Community Outreach and have been involved for over 11 years with our organization. My family and I are also proud members of the Science Center, so it's nice to be with you on a couple levels here today. We are really proud to partner on this initiative with the Science Center and Let Us Grow Together. It's all about working together in this community. We couldn't be joined by a better gardener than Alyssa Crawford from our team. Alyssa does an incredible job at our garden, and this is actually the 10th anniversary of our garden in Bellevue. We're really proud that over the last 9 seasons, 40,000 plus pounds of fresh produce have been produced and given out at our food pantries. As an organization, we serve in a general year 3,000 plus clients to 30 plus thousand services. There's 20 programs, 20 initiatives of NHGO that we oversee and operate, over 40 zip codes in 50 communities, and we engage over 1,000 volunteers per year. But again, we couldn't do it without great partners like the Science Center. Christina, to you and everyone at the Science Center, get ready for an amazing show. And so all of you watching on Facebook Live, you are going to learn, you are going to grow. We as a team are so incredibly proud of Alyssa Crawford and what she's going to be sharing with you here today.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much, Tom, for sharing all of that excellent information with us. Alyssa, we are so excited to have you. Now, I believe you are the garden and youth coordinator for the garden that you all have, which is, as Tom said earlier, volunteer, community supported organic garden. Those numbers are fantastic, serving over 45,000 pounds of produce and serving so many families. That's really amazing. Thank you so much for the awesome work that you all do. And so today, my friends, joining us, Alyssa will be exploring with us fun and exciting garden topic that I am really excited to learn a little bit more about. We're going to explore worms and vermicomposting. And Alyssa, it looks like you've got a bunch of gear set up to dig into. So let's get started. Share a little bit more with us about worms and vermicomposting.
All right. So thanks so much for having me. We're here at the Rosalinda Saro Sirianni Garden, located in Bellevue, and was already mentioned, all the fruits and vegetables that we grow here at our garden, we send to our 3 food pantries to community members in need. And we are an organic garden, and it's really important for us to feed our soils healthy, organic soil amendments so we can have really nutrient dense fruits and vegetables. So today I'm going to talk about one way that we feed our soils, and that is through vermicomposting. And that's a fancy word for compost through worms. And if you're not sure how that works, that's totally fine. We're going to talk about it today. I'm going to show you an example of a bin and how we would get a bin started. This is something that you can do at home. It's actually surprisingly simple. So a little bit about worms. Who here has seen a worm before? Maybe you've dug in the dirt, you've seen a worm wriggling in the soil, or after a rainstorm, you see them on the pavement. Those are not actually the worms that we use for our worm bin. We use a special species of worm called red wigglers. There's actually 9,000 species of worms on this planet. That is a ton of worms, and they range in size from a 1/2 inch to 22 feet. I don't know about you, but I don't sure I want to meet a 22-foot worm. But the red wigglers that we use are fairly small, and we'll get a chance to see them today. And those red wigglers are super hardy, and they are fast eaters. That's why we like to use them in our worm bin. They can eat about their body weight in a day. So if you weigh 100 pounds, that would be as if you were eating 100 pounds of food a day. That is a lot of eating. They are very busy creatures. Our red wigglers have about 95 segments, and that helps them move through the soil. And they're what we call surface dwellers. They don't go that deep. They like to stay on top, the top 4 to 6 inches. So we don't make our bins too deep with soil. They stay on the surface. And they eat the stuff that we put in the bin. I'll show you what we're going to put in. And what they poop out, that is our what we call black gold. That is that special fertilizer that really feeds our plants and helps our soils be healthy, to make nutritious fruits and vegetables. And you might see behind me, we have some compost bins. This is a different kind of composting. This is also great for the soils, great for the environment, but today we're focusing on worm composting. So in the US, about 40% of our food supply goes to the landfills. That is a huge number of food, of waste. And so one way that we can help deal with that issue is taking our kitchen scraps and feeding them to worms. This will help the environment and prevents all that waste from going to landfill. So some things that we could feed the worms, I have right here. Any kind of scraps from your kitchen should work. Here we have some like old kale. We have eggshells, apple core, some banana peels, some like tea bags, anything like that you can feed your worms. One hint is to kind of cut it up so the worms can eat it faster. These worms don't have teeth. So we can help them out by cutting that up a little smaller. They actually digest the food through grit that's in their system.
Alyssa, I have a question for you real quick.
Yeah, please.
Is there a favorite thing that the red wigglers love to eat?
That's a great question. I'm not sure if there's a preferred thing. There's a few things that we want to keep out of our bin in general. We don't want to add spicy peppers. We want to stay away from meat and dairy. And we want to stay away from too much citrus. So we wouldn't want to put like, if we're making lemonade, we wouldn't want to put like a ton of lemon peels in there, for example. That is just not the best conditions for the worms. But other than that, they love, we have coffee grounds in here, anything from your kitchen, for the most part, you can add to your bin. I'm going to show you a worm bin right here, and I can show you how to get one started in your home. That's one great benefit of worm composting is you can do it in your home. If you live in a small apartment, you don't have a yard or a big space for larger scale outdoor composting, it's fine. And some people wonder, is this bin going to smell bad? Or is it going to attract flies, fruit flies? And the answer is, if you are doing it correctly, no. It will not smell. You will not have insects or flies. And I'll give you some tips to avoid that, to manage it well. So it's going to, not be an issue if you have it in your house. So this is my worm bin right here. It's just like a basic tote. One thing that you want to do is you don't want it to be clear plastic. The 4 things that worms need to do well is food. We've mentioned food. They need moisture. Worms actually breathe through their skin, and they're 90% water. So they need to stay moist. We don't want a dry bin. They need space to move around. And they also need a shelter. So this is our shelter here. And what we will add to our bin. So actually I have a setup to where I put multiple bins inside. So once one bin is eaten up, then I'm ready to harvest that worm poop, which is called castings. That's the black gold. I can stick another bin in with holes in the bottom, and then the worms will climb up through, and then my bottom bin is ready to go straight into my garden. So one question that people ask is, how much should I put in my pottings, in my plants? And you don't want to grow your plant in pure vermicompost, in pure castings. The recommendation is about 10 to 40%. But any amount is going to fertilize your plants and help them be stronger and healthier. So this is my bin. I'm gonna, worms hate the sunlight, so they crawl away. But I wanna show you a little wriggler. Can you see it? Is it? So this is our little wriggler. And they've all gone down into the soil. This is what our castings look like. This is actually about ready to be harvested. We have some here too. This is our black gold that we're gonna put into our garden to feed our vegetables. So this is about finished. We've added another bin, and I'm going to show you how you basically make a bin. I don't know if you can see here, but we have some holes drilled into the bottom for aeration and for our worms to crawl up through. We want to add some soil from our garden or sand, and this will help provide that grit that I mentioned to feed, so those worms can digest that food. So we're going to add some soil, and you can just get this from your yard. I mentioned that moisture content. Your worm bin should feel, it should be about the wetness of a squish sponge. So how that feels is about the moisture content that you want in your worm bin. Here we have, so in addition to the soil, we want to add some newspaper shreddings are the easiest, best way. And this is called bedding. And the worms will also eat this too, and then it'll break down. So we want to add that. And I've soaked this in water already. If I'm squeezing it, you can see a little bit of that water coming out. One thing you want to stay away from is glossy paper, but any sort of newspaper, printed newspaper is great. So we're going to add this to our bin. And then we have our food scraps. I kind of already mentioned that. One thing you want to do is make sure your food scraps are buried. We don't want to set them on top. So I'm going to dump this into our bin. And I'm going to cover it up with that newspaper and that soil. So you're not seeing that food is not exposed. It's underneath the newspaper. And then lastly, worms. And so you may have a question, well, where am I going to get these worms? I would say go on the internet and search red wigglers. Red wigglers are the type of worm that you want. And you want to get about 1 or 2 pounds. That's about 1,000 or 2,000 worms in total. And you can get them shipped to you, and then you will they'll usually come in a bag, and you will add them to your soil, and they will get eating all those scraps and producing that rich fertilizer for our plants.
Now, Alyssa, that's a really big box. Does our box have to be that big, or can it be smaller? What do you recommend?
It can definitely be smaller. These are the totes that I've used, just because they're easy to find and they're fairly affordable. I would recommend not to go smaller than about 15 gallons, a 15-gallon tote. Mm-hmm.
Gotcha. Now, Alyssa, I have kind of a silly question. Will our worms escape from our tote?
That is a great question. So if those worms are happy, they will not escape. So I will give you an example. One time I added a bunch of, it was like shredded bleach paper. And for whatever reason, the worms did not like that paper. And they started all crawling up the sides of the bin. And so I knew I had a problem. They were not happy in that bin. If they're happy in their environment, they will not leave the bin. But we actually do keep a lid on it. And this is mostly to prevent you know, anything from coming into it. And they, like I said, they need a dark environment. So this will keep the sunlight out too.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Now, will our soil from our vermicomposting, will that ever over fertilize our soil in our gardens?
As long as we're keeping it under 40%. So once we go above 40% of that growing medium, if that's the worm compost, then we could see some issues with our plants. But if we're keeping it under that amount, the plants are going to be happier and healthier than ever. This vermicompost, it provides really rich nutrients for our plants. And actually, studies have shown that it helps your plant sprout better too, or your seeds sprout better.
Gotcha. Really cool. This is great information.
Yeah.
Now, is vermicomposting costly?
So your main expense, well, your expenses would be your bins, which I got these on sale, and you can find them, you know, at most stores. So your main expense is just going to be your worms. If you know anyone with worms, worms do reproduce, so you can get worms from a friend that does worm composting. But otherwise, you would have to purchase the worms online, and that price varies. So that would be your one expense with your worms.
Gotcha. And another question that I have for you, and you kind of touched upon this a little bit, but what are the main differences between the soils that maybe we just have in our backyard that we use to plant our gardens in versus the soil and the great nutrients that we get from our vermicomposting bin?
Yeah. So our soils in Western PA, they're very clay heavy. If you've ever like played with clay, you know, it's super dense and like sticks together and holds water. So that's an issue that we have when we garden in Western Pennsylvania. And our vermicompost, that provides a rich nutrition. It's actually like it's a fertilizer. It's not the same as the soil that we grow our plants in. And so it provides especially a lot of nitrogen, which is a key component to our plants' growth.
Gotcha. That's great information. Now, Alyssa, would you say it's difficult to start vermicomposting, or is it kind of simple to get started into it?
I think it's pretty simple. There is a learning curve. You know, once you're able to get a bin and you can drill some holes, that may be you know, drilling holes is something that we may need a grown-up's help with. And sourcing the worms and getting newspaper, we're ready to go. And so you may learn as you go how quickly your worms will eat your food. I recommend that you feed your worms once a week. Okay. And so you'll put your food in, you'll cover it up with that newspaper. And if you come back in a week and you notice, oh, they ate all the food, so next week you might add more. If you notice that when you come back after a week that there's still a lot of scraps left, you would realize I fed them too much. And so you want to kind of check week to week on how much food they're eating. If you get too much food, if you feed them too much, that could be an issue that could lead to bad smells.
Gotcha. Now, I know earlier you showed us how the paper that you used was kind of damp. Would we have to add extra water to our paper, or does it dry out?
So if you're adding every week, you're adding kitchen scraps, our vegetables and fruits, they have water in them. When you initially add that newspaper, you want to make sure that it's wet. You shouldn't need to regularly add water. But if you get into your bin and you notice, you know what, it's not the dampness of a wrung out sponge, you could spray a little water on that newspaper to make sure that it's moist enough, because you don't want it to dry out.
Awesome. Alyssa, this is really great information. I know I'm getting really excited trying to think of a way that I could maybe start a vermicomposting bin at my house, especially with the springtime coming up. It's a great time to get our seedlings started and maybe start growing some plants even at home. So Alyssa, this has been great information. I know that I've learned a lot today, and it sounds like with anything, practice can make perfect to help our vermicomposting and our composting bins to go well. Is there any final tips or information you'd like to share with our friends today?
I think we covered a lot of information. If you have any questions, there's a ton of great resources online on YouTube, and you can always feel free to reach out to me. You can visit our website, www.nhco.org, and find my contact information. Feel free to call me, email me, and we'd love to have you come out to our garden to learn more.
Awesome. This was great information. Alyssa, thank you so much for joining us today. Tom, thank you so much for joining us today. We're super excited to do maybe another segment, learning a little bit more, getting to know Alyssa as a gardener, and explore our next topic next month.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm really excited to be here, and I hope some of you are encouraged to try your own worm bin.
Awesome. Thank you so much again. And thank you everyone for joining us today for our Get to Know a Gardener segment. For more fun science activities and videos, or learning more about our Let Us Grow Together program, feel free to check out our website, which should be linked in our comments below. I want to thank everyone again for watching this awesome program. Another thank you to Alyssa and Tom, and we hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you so much, everyone.